We're in our the season of giving. We call this I call this a giving season, and our series revolves around giving and what it means to give and what giving looks like and why we should give and what God gives to us. And last week we talked about God's greatest gift ever. We talked about the best gift we could ever hope to give. And God gave us the best when He gave us His Son, Jesus Christ. We're able to see that Jesus is God's greatest gift ever. It's a gift, it's an eternal gift. It's not just a one-time thing and then later on it got broken and, oh, you remember that one gift that we got, but now it's no good anymore. You know, no, the gift of Jesus Christ is forever. And if you accept Him into your heart and into your life, you'll never be the same again. He will begin a transformation that will begin inside of you and then will become evident to everyone who comes to know you and comes in contact with you. Understand that the gift of Jesus to us represents the Father's love for us. It represents God's affection for you and for me. That God loved us so much that He sent His very own Son so that you and I can experience a relationship with Him like no other relationship you and I will ever know. And all that was motivated by God's love for us. Not because we're perfect, not because we got it all figured out, not because we're holy and righteous, but because we were broken. Because we had no hope. Because we needed to be rescued. God sent His Son to be our rescuer and our Redeemer. God's gift of Jesus also represents God's forgiveness. His gift of forgiveness. And that represents God's redemption. And we were broken in our sin and that we don't have a solution. There's nothing you and I can do to ever balance out the scales. I run into people all the time and say, well, I just hope that in the end I do more good than bad. So who's keeping count? Where do you have that memo or that ledger where you say, okay, today I did X amount of bad, but I did X amount of good to cancel it out. So at the end my books will balance. The books of my life will balance. Who's keeping that track? Where do you keep that record? Remember we talked about sin. We talked about sin isn't just necessarily as we think of doing bad things. So we would calculate sin, doing something bad, thinking a bad thought or saying a bad word or being mean to somebody. But sin, the Bible defines sin as anything that violates the will of God, anything that is displeasing to God. And it goes to the extent of if you know what's right and you don't do what's right, that's a sin. Sin isn't just about doing bad things, it's not doing the good when you know that you ought to do it. Reminds me of the Christmas song, right? He sees you when you're sleeping, He knows when you're awake, He knows if you've been bad or good, so
be good for goodness sake.
Be good for goodness sake. But too often we look at, what am I to get out of it? It's not just for the sake of doing right. It's not just for the sake of, this pleases God. I'm going to do it because it pleases God. No, I'm going to do it, yes, on the back end it pleases God, but what am I going to get out of it? What's in it for me? Tragically, that's the way we view too many things and too many situations. But God's gift of Jesus was a Father's way of giving us forgiveness and redemption, redeeming us back into Himself. Helping us come back from being away to come back to a relationship with the living God. To being in harmony with the living God. You go back to creation, you see in the beginning of creation, God walked with Adam and Eve in the garden. Those are relationships. God would come and talk to Adam on a daily basis, and they would just commune and converse. They had that relationship. But sin broke that relationship. See, when you and I have sin in our lives, we violate that relationship with God. It's broken. We need it to be healed and we need it to be fixed. And again, we can't do it on our own. The only solution for that is Jesus Christ. And by God sending His Son Jesus, He offered the gift of forgiveness and redemption so that we could come back into a relationship with Him. He paid the price to cancel out our debt. That takes us into God's gift of Jesus also represents the Father's mercy. It represents the mercy of the Father. That our God has compassion towards you and towards me. That while we deserve, because of sin, that we deserve to be destroyed. We deserve to be completely wiped out. God has mercy on us. He has compassion towards us. And He sent His Son to be destroyed in our place. Jesus suffered the consequences and the penalty of our sin by dying on the cross, being buried, and spending 3 days in hell to pay the price for our sinful nature. That's something that you and I deserve. We deserve it. You know, we talk about it, and I want what I deserve. I hear that all the time, right? No, you don't. Even at work, we would demand from our boss, give me what I deserve. You'd be unemployed if you got what you deserve. You know, think about it. Think about it. You know, how many times we ride that clock? How many times you show up late and want to leave early? How many times you take an extra long break in the Skittle can? Or how many times you accidentally forgot to take it out of your pocket? Well, it's mine now, I guess, right? Mercy is God's compassion towards us. It's God's. Jesus represents the Father's mercy. He's not giving us what we deserve. He's giving us what we don't. And that takes us to grace. Jesus represents the Father's grace towards us, which comes to our salvation. We deserve to be destroyed. Mercy gives us compassion. But then it goes beyond that. Not only does God not give us what we deserve, but then He gives us something that we don't deserve. He gives us salvation. He gives us a place in the kingdom of heaven. Stop and think about it. I mean, just, I don't know why. And I guess it's hard because we don't really see ourselves in a bad light. We just don't. We don't. We don't see ourselves as bad people. We don't. I mean, we got flaws here and there, but I'm not really a bad person. I passed by a Salvation Army kettle and I put some coins in. I saw somebody on the side of the road. I gave them a few bucks. We don't see ourselves as bad people. We don't see ourselves as evil people. That's not how God sees creation. Without Christ, we deserve to be utterly, completely wiped out. We don't deserve love. We don't deserve mercy. We don't deserve forgiveness. We don't deserve grace. We don't deserve salvation. We don't deserve a place in the kingdom of heaven. I mean, if you think about it, it's like inviting a murderer or a rapist, a pedophile, to go over to your house for Christmas dinner. Look at that and you'd be like, that's ludicrous. Brother Mars, that's insane. Who would do that? God. And He does. He says if we will embrace His Son Jesus Christ, and see, it's not, man, I was reading on this and it's like, it just so many things. My biggest problem is that I read. One of the greatest things I do is read, but one of my biggest problems I read because in it, so many things, right? Okay? Now I was reading this this morning actually. It says we go to prayer and we talk to God and we go into worship actually. And because I'll study what worship means and I'll get into that here in a little bit. But worship, we bow our heads in worship. We bow our heads. It's an act of worship. When we go into prayer, we bow our heads and close our eyes. But I was reading this. We bow our heads, but how many of us don't bow our hearts? I was like, oh, we'll close our eyes, we'll put our head down, we'll be silent. But we're not worshiping. We're just following protocol. Just going through the motions. See, God isn't interested in the motions. He's the one that can see past that. You know, I could come and lay down right here on the floor and say, I'm worshiping. But God can look into, He does. Not that He can, He does. He looks into my heart and knows surrendering or not. If I'm truly surrendered or not. If I've truly just submitted to Him or not. He can see past the hoopla and see into the substance. That's what's awesome about our God. That's what's amazing about our God. That's why He can see that if that heart, even though they might have done the most atrocious evil ever, if they've surrendered and repented and asked for forgiveness, He can see into their heart. He can also see if they're just saying that to get out of and get a lesser punishment or escape from something. He can see past all that. He can see to the root of the matter in the center of the being and lay bare what's truly there. That's why when God offers His gift of grace, and if you will truly receive it, it won't be the same anymore. You'll be transformed. You'll be transformed. And then we come back to it. That's God's gift of salvation. That's what Jesus represents. So when we talk about giving, we always think that we initiate everything. It's coming first from us, but really it came first from God. God gave that to us. He gave that to you and to me when He gave us His Son. When He gave us life. When He gave us life. If you stop and think about it from a biological perspective, okay? When your mom and daddy got together, those millions of your brothers and sisters fighting for a place to come into this world. Millions of them. I tell people all the time when they tell me, I'm not very fast. You were very fast once. You've been the fastest one time in your life. Okay? You've beat millions in a race. And out of those millions, God selected you to come into this world. God provided a way for you to exist. It could have been somebody else. Easily could have been somebody else. You have to understand that God has chosen you for a plan and a purpose. And it's up to you to want to know and discover what that plan and purpose is. And then it's up to you to want to live out that plan and purpose in a way that glorifies God. The best thing I've ever heard, or one of the best things I've ever heard, and the way it put is, our life is God's gift to us. How we live it is our gift back to Him. This morning, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're talking about what God has given us. Now we're going to talk about giving back to God. What can we give back to God? What can we do to give back to God? And we're going to be talking about giving in Matthew chapter 2, verse 11. It talks about that first Christmas, if you will. It says, and on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped Him. It's talking about the three wise men that came. Okay, and came into the manger, came into the stable, if you will. And they bowed down and worshipped Him. And then they opened their treasures and presented Him with gifts of gold, of incense, and of myrrh. They came in, they opened their treasures, and they presented Him the gifts. Let's pray and we'll talk about that. Father God, once again, we thank You for this time together. We thank You for Your word. We humbly ask and pray that Your Holy Spirit just guide and direct Your truth into our hearts and into our minds, that we may honor and glorify You, Father, that we might grow in the knowledge of You. In Jesus' name, amen. They worshiped Him. Did you catch that? Did you see that? Did you notice that? Here they came in, these dignitaries from other nations and other places. Why God set that in their heart, I don't know. There's been so many different discussions about that, but the bottom line is they showed up and they came, and they journeyed, they followed the star and they journeyed, and they came where the star resided and rested upon this manger, upon this stable. It wasn't at the Hilton, it wasn't at the palace, it wasn't at, this grand place. It was in a stable, because there was no room for Him at the end. He was in a stable, and through humble beginnings they came in. and they worshiped Him. They bowed down and worshiped Him. It was an act of reverent submission to Jesus as Lord. See, don't say they came in, they bowed down and worshipped His mom. Don't say He came in, they bowed down and they worshipped His dad. And say He came in and bowed down and worshipped the animals that were there. So they came, they bowed, and they worshipped Him. Him. When you and I come into the temple to worship, when you and I go into an act of worship or a heart of worship, which should be every breath of our life. But just remember, when you come into this church house, you're not here to worship me. You're not here to make me feel good. I mean, don't get me wrong, I hope that because of our relationship with God and because of our friendship and our brotherhood and our sisterhood, that yeah, we do gain joy from seeing one another. We get excited. We get encouraged. But when it's all said and done, you and I don't come here to worship each other. We come here to worship the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. When we come here, we should bow down and worship. Not physically, spiritually. Or should I say, not merely physically, but more importantly, spiritually. That's why it shouldn't be just our hearts, our heads bowed, but our hearts, our souls. Our souls should be bowed down in reverent submission, not to me, not to this organization, not to this whatever, but to the King. They came in, these leaders, and they bowed down in a reverent act of submission to the Lord Jesus Christ. And He was an infant. And then they opened their treasuries and they presented Him with gifts. We talked about this last week. You know, imagine throwing a Christmas party for somebody. Today's Mia's birthday, by the way. Okay? She's 11. Give me a second. She's just born. She's brand new. How can she be 11 already? I would tell her when she was little, please don't grow up, baby. Stay little forever. You can't, Daddy. You can't stay little. But imagine we throw a birthday party for Mia. We throw this big old birthday party. It's all in Mia's honor. And everybody comes and they bring gifts and we get there and say, hey, Mia, we're here to honor you. You know, that's your birthday. And then we turn to each other and we start handing the gifts to one another and say, hey, I got you this. Hey, I got you this. How many say, yeah, we're doing it wrong? You don't know how to celebrate a birthday party. You're doing it all wrong. You're supposed to give the gifts to the one that we're honoring at the birthday party. It's their party. Now, what the heck happened with Christmas? What happened? The wise men didn't come in and say, hey man, we came to worship you, the baby Jesus, you're born, reverend, we're bowing down. Hey, we got these gifts. Hey, I brought this for you, Mary. Hey, Joseph, this one's yours. They didn't do that. Why did we do that? Where did we get wrong? They presented their gifts and they presented them to Jesus, not one another. Why have we lost sight of that? I think 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 5 can give us some insight and some hint why we have lost sight of this and why we're off. And please don't get me wrong, okay? Don't misunderstand me. I'm not a Scrooge. I'm not like, oh, we shouldn't share joy and cheer and we shouldn't, we should be doing that all year round. I mean, why do we gotta wait till one day out of the year to show people that we love them, we care about them, and that we appreciate them? It doesn't make sense. I don't want to wait till Christmas again. I'm wearing socks. When I needed them all year. Man, go to Walmart and give me a pair of socks, Sorry, I get myself. But 2 Timothy chapter 3, 1 through 5 says this, but mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days, and people will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful and unholy, and without love, unforgiving, slanderous, and without self-control. They'll be brutal. They'll be not lovers of good. They'll be treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. And it goes on to say this, have nothing to do with such people. Have nothing to do with it. Kick them out of your circle. That's what it's saying. That's got to be tough right there. This is Paul's letter to Timothy offering advice on how to be a leader, what's going on and what's coming. You tell me if that's not accurate. You tell me if that doesn't describe our society right now and where we fall into. You tell me if that doesn't put us in this season and where we're looking at what can I do to bless others and what can happen to bless me. I ain't get nothing. Who did you give? Who did you give to? We will need to be extra careful. I pray that this passage in Timothy doesn't describe us. That doesn't identify me. Talking about gifts for Jesus, gifts for our King. When we talk about gifts for the King, we're talking about giving the gift of gold. That was the first gift that was presented. Did you see that? They opened their treasuries and they gave the gift of gold. Gold for centuries has represented value. How do we look at that? Does Jesus need gold? The Bible says he owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. He's set financially. But for us, giving the gift of gold means giving of our resources. Giving of our resources. What is your most valuable resource? Your house, your car? You got in the bank? I hope not. That heirloom, something your mom, your dad, your grandpa left you. The reality of our most valuable resource is our time. Time is the only commodity that you and I have that once it's spent, we can never make up more of. And we can never get it back. I was talking to Derek here earlier in the kitchen, man. I said, dude, time's going to fly by, son. I'm fixing to graduate. This coming weekend, I graduate with my bachelor's finally, this coming weekend, Lord willing. It's still out there. Lord willing, I'll make it. Okay? Lock it out between now and then. Okay? But Lord willing, I reach that milestone. But I'll share with Brother Amador and I'll share with them. Derek, I started this journey, okay, all the way back to 1996. 1990. Over 20 years. By now I should have multiple doctorates. But time's going to fly by. It's going to fly by. I look back as, what have I done with that time? How have I invested it? And how have I invested it to advance His kingdom? I've been a pastor for over 20 years. It's crazy to think about it. For 20 years, a little over 20 years, and I made the commitment to give my life to Christ. And I began serving in His work. Never thought I'd end up at this point. Okay. And in this 20 years, my heart still aches. Because I feel like I haven't done enough. I feel like there's so much more I could have done. And so much more I need to. in comparison to everything and on how God has blessed me and blessed my life. This time in school has really hurt. So I was sharing with my wife as we were walking in. I said, it's taken away from my time here in the ministry. And that's why I kept putting it off for so long. So people ask me, why did it take you so long? Because I was doing other things. And when God brought conviction on my heart that in order for me to have a greater impact, I needed to take this direction, I said, man, how, Lord? How? But true to His word, He says, I will provide a way. And He has every step of the way. Everywhere there was a roadblock, He opened up a door. Every step of the way on this journey. And He's still continuing to do so, even forward, because my journey doesn't end. I have to work towards my master's now. I was looking for a master's program. I was sharing with some of you. And during my dad's week where he was sick and dying, we were at his house, and my aunt and uncle come by. And I'm talking to my aunt because I know she works in the college system, and she's like, I said, hey, I'm looking for a graduate program, to start working on my master's, fixing a graduate. She goes, I'm the dean of graduate studies at my school. She said, just apply. She gave me her card. She said, call me. I'll get everything, get your application ready, and I'll get you a scholarship. God is still. Because at first I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to do this, Lord. It's expensive. How am I going to do this, Lord? God says, just be obedient. Be faithful. And I'll take care of that. He opens doors. How can we not invest our time wisely in serving His kingdom? How can we not? How can we not? And guys, you got to understand that it's more than just showing up for an hour or two on Wednesday and Sunday. Imagine if you only showed up 2 hours a week at work. What kind of paycheck would you get? And then go demanding to your boss, hey, I want a full paycheck. I know I only showed up 2 hours, but hey, I want to get paid for 40. Are you crazy? You're like, you should be lucky I still got you on payroll showing up 2 days a week, 2 hours a week. None of us could survive on that. But yet, that's the investment we want to make into God's kingdom. I wonder why we don't get the maximum benefit out of it. Now, I'm not saying you have to be 24/7. I'm just saying, hey, live and glorify Him in all you do. Spend time with Him on a daily basis, whether through prayer or study of His Word or worship or serving others. But you have to do something. You have to invest. You have to make a contribution of your time. See, giving our time as giving one of our resources means we take the time to help serve and grow His kingdom. Take the time. I was having a conversation with a kid the other day, and I pulled him off into my office and set aside. I said, look, son, I'm just going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you the flat, honest truth. If you don't get God into your life, you're going nowhere. You need a heavy dose of Jesus. He told me, with respect, Barnes, he said, I've tried going to different churches. I've tried different religions. I've tried the Christian thing. I've tried Muslim. I've tried different religions. He said, I just found that it's not for me. I said, I appreciate you sharing that with me. And I want to, let me clarify, because I obviously didn't make myself clear. I'm not talking about trying religion. I'm telling you about trying a relationship with the living God through Jesus Christ, His Son. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a relationship, not a religion. That's what you need to turn your life around. So I promise you this, if you open up your heart and your soul and you ask Christ to come in, you will never be the same again. And He'll transform you from the inside out. And just stay pondering that. Lord, the seed has been sown. I I'll do my best to cultivate it, to pull weeds, to move stones, to add some water. Let's move the growth that's in your hands. We have to invest our time to help grow God's kingdom. What else do we need to, what other resources do you and I have? What other goal do we have? We have the goal of our talent. We have the goal of our talent. What can you do? You see, you don't have to do everything, but everyone can do something. What can you do? What can you do to make a difference for the kingdom? Can you sew? Can you cook? Can you clean? Can you fix something? Can you just go, you know what? I'll provide the back, the muscle. I can move stuff. What do you need me to do? What can I do to help? To be a part? Pick up water. I can, whatever. I can barbecue, whatever, and I can use my talent, my gift, I can cut hair. I can do that. What can I do? I have talent with music. I have talent with graphics. I have talent with computers. What is your talent? I can organize things. I can plan things. I'm a good people person. I can go and get things, put them together. I can do these things. Those are your talents. How are you applying those for God's kingdom? I'm real good with kids. I'm real good with teens. I can do these things. These are my resources. This is my talent. People ask me all the time, why do I work with kids all the time? Why I train? That's what I'm good at. It's a talent I have. I use it to build a relationship. So that eventually I can talk to them about Jesus. That's what it's about. I started training Adam when he was in the 7th grade. Boys and girls club. Started training Derek when he almost got in a fight and I had to break that up. Shortly thereafter, I started training him. Then Patrick, Tristan, all these different kids. I prayed with the kids to accept Christ in the Boys and Girls Club. In the high school. Outside of Iron House. All over. Why? It's because that's what I do. I help kids. I work with basketball players. Where can I help? I have this talent. What do I do with it? Bury it? Be an unfaithful servant and bury it because, I want to lose it. Or do I invest it? There are going to be some people that don't understand. They're going to slap my hand away. Yeah. But there'll be others that God will take. And in time, He will cultivate and He will develop. He will grow. And they'll be back. See, taking your talent and giving God your talent means using your knowledge, skills, abilities to advance God's kingdom. What are you doing with your skills and knowledge and abilities? What are you doing? How are you going to sit on it? Why don't you just hold it? You're meant to keep it to yourself. You're meant to use it to glorify the kingdom of God. Lastly, this one where everybody gets touchy. Okay? This one, everybody gets real defensive on this one. Okay? Our last resource, and ultimately, yes, eventually it comes down to this. We have our time, we have our talent, and the Bible calls it our tithe. Okay? The Bible calls it our tithe. What is a tithe? The tithe is 10% of your financial income. Understand that this is a starting point, not the finish line. It's a starting point. 10%. That means God is asking that you take 10% of what He's blessed you with and return it to Him and keep the other 90%. Did you catch that though? Of what He's given. Because ultimately it all belongs to Him. I think it's a pretty fair deal. Say, hey, you take 90, just give me 10. Man, we struggle with that, don't we? Oh, reading this in regards to giving. Listen to this. W.A. Criswell, he's an old pastor, man, amazing pastor. If you ever study and read the works or listen to sermons by Dr. Criswell, you'll be so blessed. He says he told of an ambitious young man who told the pastor that he promised God a tithe of his income. They prayed for God to bless his career. At the time, he was making $40 per week and tithing $4. Okay? Get that? He's making $40 a week and tithing $4. In a few years, his income increased, and he was tithing $500 per week. And he called the pastor to see if he could be released from his tithing promise, for it was too costly now. Did you get that? For him to be tithing $500, that means he's being blessed. Okay, really blessed. The pastor replied, I don't see how you can be released from your promise, but we can ask God to reduce your income to $40 a week. Then you'll have no problem tithing the $4 again. How crazy is that? Now, I remember back when, and this is just, I'm not, no brag, please understand this. This is just a witness, it's just true. I remember back when we first started tithing. Chris was not on board. Let me say that to you. Okay? She was not on board. We were struggling financially, and we've struggled financially for years. Let me say that to you, different things, different reasons. But back then, we were ignorant and broke, because we didn't have an education, we didn't have a career, we did everything backwards. That's what I tell my kids now, do it this way. Please, trust me, do it this way. Okay? I tell most of the people that I get the honor of performing their marriage, wait at least 3 to 4 years, 5 years if you can, before you have kids. They all look at me like crazy. Why? Because all the parents were grandkids, and I'm like, no, slow down. Get a pet. See how good you are now. Start with a pet and not a fish. Okay, get a dog or a cat and see how good you are. Especially a dog, they're very needy. Okay, start there. I said, but why? Because it takes time for you to get to know one another. Because you don't know people until you marry them. You can date them forever. I don't know what's the difference between once you sign that paper, it's like, man, you really find out what you hooked up to. Okay? Anyway, we first started tithing, and I remember we were struggling financially, and I didn't understand how to fix it. And I remember talking to my grandfather, and my grandfather told me, Bill, do you tithe? And I was like, tithe, what's that? Heard about it in church, but I didn't really understand it. And he told me, go look up this passage in the scripture, and then read through it, and then pray about it. And as God leads you, be obedient. So I did. I went and looked up, Malachi chapter 2, and then I read through it, and chapter 3, I read through it, and I read through the whole book of Malachi, and I saw, okay, this is what God feels, and this is what God's saying, this is what God is promising. And he says this, ultimately he says, if you will give me what's yours, because what's mine, he says, because you're stealing from me by keeping what's mine. He says, you're stealing. He said, but if you will be faithful and give me what's mine, I will open the floodgates of heaven and pour out a blessing upon you. I'll open the floodgates. And I was like, man, okay. And then this is the only place in Scripture that I've ever found that where God says, try me, test me, and see. Now, I remember coming home and telling Chris, hey, I think this is what we need to do. I think this is why we struggle financially. She told me, you're crazy. We're already barely making it. How are we going to make more money by giving it away? That doesn't make sense. It's poor math. It's very poor economics. That don't make sense. I said, it may not make sense, but this is what God is telling us to do. See, this is what we're going to do. And she was so mad at me. I remember that. I remember when we gave that first offering. She said, now we're broke. Because I didn't understand first fruits back then. I said, well, I just read it. This is all we got left. This is what we're supposed to give. And we're going to give. She was very upset. Very upset with me. Okay. I said, Lord, I'm just going to trust you with this. I'm just going to trust you with this. She left for work that next day, and she used to clean offices, part-time here in Beeville, actually. It was the one we cleaned here in Beeville. And we would do that, and she would get paid at a certain time, of the month, and it was always on the same time of the month, that they would send her a check for that. And anyway, this was not the time of the month, And she came home that day, and she's coming home. I hear her drive in because we had the car that Selena was singing about. You know, Cacacha, poquito. That was the car we drove. That was our car, man. Came in like on the wing of prayer, you know. Anyway, so she's sitting out there, and she hadn't gotten down. And I was like, and in my spirit, I knew. I said, God showed her. And she gets down and she's crying. And she has an envelope. I already knew. I said, what is it? And she just had it. And it was a paycheck. You know. But like a week ahead of time. I said, God is faithful. God shows up. You know, as I was preparing this and I was thinking about it, it's like, you know, I'm always real cautious because we get a bad rap in church. Preachers get a bad rap. All they want is money. All they always asking for is money. And some are, some do. You know, I heard a pastor, you know, not too long ago was asking for, I remember how many millions of dollars he could buy a new jet. But bear in mind, he already has 3. And he had to get a new one. You know? I heard a pastor one time on the radio saying, no, we needed, you know, he was raising money from his congregation. He had a radio ministry. He was asking for money because he needed to get a plane. Because if the white man can have a plane, then he needs to have one too. The raza needs to have one too. Like, what? Where do you find this stuff, you know? I'm reading the wrong Bible. I've never found that in Scripture. As a reason or motivation. Okay? So because of that, I'm very cautious when it comes to talking about giving and money. But God convicted my heart. He says, you know, how are people going to be blessed if they don't know the truth about giving? The Scripture says God loves a cheerful giver, that when we give from your heart. The Bible talks about this poor widow that Jesus and his disciples were sitting by the offering collections. And they said this poor widow came in and she dropped in two copper coins. They said then those other people that thrown in bags of money. Bags of money. Okay? And then Jesus turns to his disciples and says, who gave the most? It's like, wow, you know, 2 copper coins, 2 pennies, a bag of gold. You know, it's kind of a no-brainer. And he says, no, the widow gave the most. But she gave everything she had to live. Gave everything she had. And God provides for her needs. That's what we're called to do. I'm not saying you got to give everything you got, no. But God says, hey, this is mine. You keep the rest. And watch how I bless you. Watch how I bless you. Now the question is, do we believe God or not? That's really what it comes down to. You know? Do we believe Him or not? Will He or won't we? And there's only one way to find out. Don't take my word for it. Try Him. Try Him. See if you don't open the floodgates. See if you don't provide that opportunity. I was reading this, and there's a bumper sticker out there that would say, honk if you love Jesus. Okay, y'all seen that one? Honk if you love Jesus. So this one says, tithe if you love Jesus. Any idiot can honk. Oh man! Okay, so a lot of people talk about how much they love the Lord, but they're not ready to put their money where their mouth is. You know. I was like, oh, that was good. That made me laugh. Okay. Amy Carmichael. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Amy Carmichael. She was a missionary for over 55 years to the country of India. 55 years on her own nickel. She took herself, she provided for herself as she served. She built orphanages in India for the most impoverished people. Okay. For 55 years. And she says this, she says, you can give without loving, but you cannot love without giving. I was like, wow, that's deep. I thought about that. You can give without it. I mean, people give all the time too. So they can write off their taxes or they can do whatever, you know, bring their tax bill down. But you can't say you love them. Those, it don't work. again, just to reiterate this point, it's not a matter of how much money I will give to God, but how much of God's money I get to keep for myself. We don't have to give. Because of our relationship with Jesus Christ, we get to. I hope you understand that. It's not about have to. It's about we get to. Investing financially to support the church and other kingdom work is one of the greatest things that you and I can ever hope to do. You see, God has given us His best through His Son Jesus, but we have to ask ourselves, what am I going to give back to Him? On the first Christmas, they came, they worshiped, and they gave. They gave their gold, they gave value. So the world will work again. What will we give? What will you give? What will you commit in your heart? That's not any of my business. That's between you and the Lord. But I promise you, as God's Word says, either He means it or He doesn't. Either He's saying the truth or He's a liar. That when we're faithful, He will open the floodgates of heaven. Let's pray. Father God, thank you so much for this time together. Thank you for your Word, Father. Thank you for allowing us, dear God, just to see the glimpse of what that first Christmas was and what it was all about and the spirit that was behind it, Father. That it wasn't about us, even though we're a part of it, Father, but it's about you and worshiping the Lord and giving Him what is rightfully His and what He is due for His glory and for His honor. Father, that we would bring our gifts of gold. That we would give our time, we would give our talent, and we would give our tithe and our resources to advance your kingdom so that others that don't know and haven't heard may have the opportunity to be reached with the gospel message of Jesus Christ. Father, when we think of the lives that have been touched through this ministry and millions of others, Father, when we think of the lives that will be touched through the life of our ministry, through the use of that facility, Father, once we get it where it needs to be. Father, when we compare a soul to coming to know Christ, there's no comparison. There's no dollar amount. There's no price that we can place on that, Father. No price than the price that was paid by the blood of Jesus Christ. Father, just help us to be faithful. Help us to be obedient. Help us to trust for your glory and for our blessings. We thank you, we praise you, and we love you. In Jesus' name we pray and ask these